Thank you, Bruce. That's great. It figures it would take Mike Barnett to do something like this to get me in a suit. Mike loved the game of golf, as Marcia and Bruce have alluded to. And he loved to play it, watch it, read, and talk about it. He also loved golf stories. And I guess his favorite one he told me one day had to do with a man and his wife. And they were sitting outside one beautiful morning on their patio having breakfast. And it was a beautiful day, and the birds were chirping, and they were just having an enjoyable breakfast. And about that time, the wife looked over at her husband and said, "Honey, if I die, would you remarry again?" And her husband said, "Oh, how can you talk about something like that? That's horrible. Let's don't even talk about that." Well, the next day, same scenario, sitting out there, she said, "Honey, if I were to die, would you remarry?" And he said, "I told you I don't want to talk about that. It's too horrible a subject. Let's just drop it." Well, wouldn't you know it, the next day, she asked again, "Honey, if I were to die, would you remarry?" And he sets his paper down and he says, "Well, you know, I guess I would remarry." She says, "Well, would you let her live in my house?" He goes, "Well, yeah, I guess I would." He goes, "Well, would you let her sleep in my bed?" "Yeah, I guess I would, sure." He says, "Well, would you let her use my golf clubs?" He goes, "Oh, no, she's left-handed." This is one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. The void and sadness we all feel today is very real. But it's not without hope that we mourn, and we're not alone in our mourning, for the God of the universe joins us today in our sorrow. Psalm 116, verse 15 says, "His loved ones are very precious to him, and he does not let them die lightly." When Marcia called me in Colorado Springs a few days ago to let me know that Mike's battle with this insidious disease was over, I still could hardly believe it. As with many of you, my emotions ran the gamut. Marcia, thank you for allowing me to be here today. Just to share a few of my fondest memories of Mike. It is truly an honor and a privilege to be here. Valerie and Melody, your daddy was such a fine guy. I would remind you both that you're a part of his legacy. Just continue to be the loving daughters you are. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you a few stories about Mike. And I want you to know that he meant so much to me growing up, and stories that you probably never even heard before. And I know you'll come to understand what he has meant to me throughout my life. You have lost your wonderful father, and I have lost also my longest and dearest friend. Let me begin by saying at some point in time, and none of us know when, we will all depart this life. And at that time, our family and friends will gather together as we're doing today, where we will be remembered. And make no mistake about it, we will all be remembered. But I think a greater question we might need to ask ourselves today It's not just whether we'll be remembered, but will we be missed? How I will miss Mike. He truly was the very best friend a man could ever have. For 62 years, he was a joy, and he was a continuing blessing in my life. I'll never forget the fun and the laughter we shared together throughout the years. As I began to reflect about what I might say today, there was one word that just kept coming up in my mind, and that word was first. Because you see, Mike was my very first friend. We met in the first grade at Castleberry Elementary School in Fort Worth. So for 62 years, our relationship grew and endured as we grew up as kids and then as adults. Little did I know at the time, but the next 12 years of my life would be filled with so many happy memories. The first movie, or picture show, as we called it back then, that I ever remember I went to was with Mike. We were probably 7 or 8 years old, and we walked up to the Red Ropes Theater. You'll remember it, Robert. About a 5-minute walk from your house. And I can still remember it was from here to eternity. Well, hey, many of you seniors and senioritas will remember that film. Well, we'd go on Saturday, pay 25 cents, watch lots of double features and westerns and war flicks, and eventually things like The Tingler and Creature from the Black Lagoon. We watched so many movies together all through the years. I remember watching the first James Bond movie, Dr. No, at the Westerner Drive-In Theater with Mike. I remember when I received my first baseball glove, a beautiful Rawlings glove my Uncle Harmon had bought me. And I know, I can almost be sure the first person I played golf with or played baseball with was Mike. And for the next few years, I'm sure we spent hundreds of hours playing baseball. And we both just really loved the game. We had a large backyard. And at my house, and Mike and I, along with a bunch of kids in the neighborhood, were always playing baseball, even in all kinds of weather. And sometimes we weren't even good sports. And I know Mike, the humorist that he was, called our baseball field out there La Cheaters. I found that baseball glove a few years ago, and I passed it along to my oldest son. At 9 years old, we started playing Little League Baseball. A lot of you don't know it, but Mike was a really, really good left-handed pitcher. I don't know what his one-loss record was, but I know it was pretty good, and he could always strike me out. I played in the outfield. Just more great memories of those 3 years playing Little League Baseball in the summer. Well, the years went by with Mike and I spending so much time together, riding bikes, shooting firecrackers, climbing trees, playing football, BB guns, going hunting, and just sitting in the backyard on warm summer evenings talking. Even back then, going through elementary, junior, and high school, I knew if I was with Mike, I would never get in trouble. Mike never had a rebellious nature toward his family, his teachers, or people in authority. How we need more of that today. Mike was a gentleman, and I loved being around him. His words to me were always gracious. We never had a cross word. As Marcia said, many of you know Mike was a smart guy. And he even became a member of the National Honor Society when we were in high school. Now I was in the lower third of the class. Hey, if it wasn't for people like me, there wouldn't be an upper class. Anyway, the last 6 years of school, Mike took Spanish from the 7th grade on. Well, I want to tell you something. Mike had a hard enough time with English. And, I never did hear him ever say a word of Spanish in a sentence. However, he did learn 2 words, only 2, that he passed on to me that will forever bring a smile to my face. And eventually to my 4 children who love Mike so much. What were those 2 Spanish words? Maldita hamburguesa, or damn hamburger. I think they've become my 4 children's favorite words. To this day, when the opportunity presents itself and we're out to eat somewhere, and, I asked one of them, like my daughter here, what would Mikey order? It's always Maldito hamburguesa. In 1961, Six Flags Over Texas opened in Arlington. The first time I went, of course, was with Mike and a cousin of mine. And we had just another great ride. I still have a picture of us wearing these little straw hats that we bought there at Six Flags. And attached to the side of these little straw hats was a Schlitz beer can. Well, I can't remember what happened to that hat, but it soon disappeared. And I'm sure my mom and dad had something to do with it. Well, I remember we finally made it to 16 years old, and we got our license. What a big thrill that was. Our families were so good to always let us borrow the family car. Well, Valerie and Melanie, I was with Mike when he got his first ticket. I think we'd gone to a movie downtown and we were heading back home. And it was nighttime and it was dark and there was trees and shrubs and all that with this intersection we came to. Mike fully stopped, started up, and we hadn't gone any distance before the lights were flashing. So Mike pulled over, and the police officer got out and got Mike's license and said, Michael, do you know why I stopped you? Mike, ever respectful, said, no, sir. He said, the officer said, you stopped in front of the stop sign, not even with it. Oh. Well, and Mike tried to explain what he had to do that. He had to go a little further forward so we could get a good view and see better. The police officer said, well, Michael, you should have stopped even with the stop sign and then crept forward. Well, pretty hard for a 16-year-old to argue with the kid back then, or argue with the police officer back then. I remember the first time Mike and I saw in person a president of the United States. The date was November 22nd, 1963. President Kennedy was leaving from downtown Fort Worth, headed out to Carswell Air Force Base. Castleberry High School said any of us who wanted to walk up to the highway and watch the president come by, we could. So anyway, I grabbed Mike, and I think everyone else in the school went. And I think, truth be told, most of the 16-year-old boys at the time wanted to see Jackie as much as they wanted to see the president. I remember we walked maybe 25 minutes up to River Oaks Boulevard and lined the roads, and this